Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television. It's a beautiful morning here in the capital city, Abuja. And my name is Sunday Michael Ogu. And my co-anchor has been trapped somewhere in the middle of the road with a faulty vehicle. I'm sure before we get very far with the show, she will be able to join us as we are making alternative arrangements to get her here. I'm talking about Zainab Bala. Thank you for staying tuned with us this morning, and we hope to serve you all of the best of news and entertainment and information that would help you make informed decision this morning. But first, with the headlines. Federal Executive Council approved 3.49 billion naira for aviation ministry building. Alleged 80 billion naira fraud. Accountant General suspended indefinitely. And 5 killed as traders Okada riders clash in Abuja. Now the story in details. The Federal Executive Council has approved the sum of 3.5 billion to enable the Ministry of Aviation purchase a property to be used at its main office at plot 2426, Cadastral Zone, opposite the Corporate Affairs Commission. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, announced this on Wednesday while briefing State House reporters after the Federal Cabinet meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari at the Council Chambers of the Presidential Villa in Abuja. He said the property would enable the ministry to accommodate many of its agencies in the same building as they currently operate from rented properties. Mohammed said the council also approved the award of contract for the establishment and deployment of advanced report generation utility engine web-based reporting tool in favor of Messrs. Senicon Limited in the total sum of 553 million, inclusive of 7.5% VAT, with a delivery period of 12 months. He said the technology would aid the Accident Investigation Bureau to be able to establish and develop advanced report generation system. In other news, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, has suspended the Accountant General of the Federation, Mr. Ahmed Idris, over the allegation by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission that he laundered over 80 billion naira. Daily Trust gathered that the minister directed that Idris should proceed on indefinite suspension pending the outcome of the investigation. The AFCC arrested Idris early in the week following verified intelligence that he allegedly raked off the funds through bogus consultancy and other illegal activities using proxies, family members, and closer associates. The Commission spokesperson, Wilson Uwejerim, in a statement said the funds were laundered through real estate investments in Kano and Abuja. At least 5 persons have been reportedly killed and houses set on fire in a clash between traders and Okada riders at Day Day, a community in Abuja Municipal Area Council of the Federal Capital Territory. A resident told Daily Trust that an accident involving a bikeman led to the breakdown of law and order in the community. Daily Trust cannot independently verify the casualty figures, but one of the affected persons confirmed that his house was touched. The traders were said to have attacked the rider, whom they blamed for recklessness, which led to the death of a passenger. And that is the news wrap this morning. But moving on, another report. Normalcy seemed to have been restored in Day Day community of Bari Area Council of Abuja with the presence of security operatives. This followed a fracas between traders and commercial motorcycle operators on Wednesday. Trust TV Aisha Saliu visited the community and now reports.
Clash between Okada riders and traders in Day Day Building Material Market located in a community along Kubwa-Zuba Expressway of the Federal Capital Territory on Wednesday morning. Security operatives were deployed to arrest the situation. The joint task force involved operatives of the military, the police, and the vigilante group.
Actually, as I speak to you now, even me, I don't even know the main key point that is happening. But for I just have to say because of accident. It's from there now I live. There are no any. In fact, now we are already clear the place now. Okay. But nothing now, unless I don't even know as we leave that place now. Because only we vigilante and police, we cannot stop these guys. do whatever they want. And as a soldier comes, it's from there the road is clear. But we're happy for that. Now it's in the morning. But the major problem, let's say the soldier, they are already reached here early. So this thing not going to happen.
The clash claimed some lives while properties worth millions were lost in the course of the fight. As at press time, shops were still under lock and key as business activities were shut down due to fear of reprisal attacks from the warring parties. However, there is a huge presence of security personnel in and outside the community.
There you go again, a report of another violence right here in the capital city. We seem to be on the edge these days. With every little crackers, it degenerates, and before you know it, several lives are reported to have been lost, and property worth millions of naira burns down. Day, as you know, it's a trading community, if you like, at the outskirts of the Federal Capital Territory, with several kind of trading activities headquartered around that zone, from timber to metal scrapping to several other building material shops. Sort of gathering around those places to operate from those places into the city. It's important that crises are averted to allow businesses go out and carry out their business operations as usual. And moving on to other reports, the acute water shortage facing the ancient city of Katsina and its environs may soon be over following rehabilitations, upgrading, and total overhaul of the Ajiwa Water Works. Residents of the state capital and some surrounding towns, as well as villages, have been suffering from persistent water shortage since the beginning of the project. When Trust Television visited Ajiwa Water Works recently, rehabilitation and upgrading works were at advanced stage of completion. Abdullahi Yamadi tells us more on this.
Ajiwa Water Works has never witnessed any form of rehabilitation or upgrading since its construction in 1974, when Katsina was a local government with a population of less than 6,000 people. The waterworks was designed to supply 50 million cubic liters of water to Katsina and villages along the main pipe to the Asian city. With the increasing population, water supply has continued to decline as a result of failure to replace obsolete equipment over time. However, Governor Aminu Bello Masari administration is saying that it is committing over 30 billion naira towards bringing the Ajiwa Water Works back to life. The contract is for the rehabilitation of 2 clarifiers, procurement and installation of new electromechanical equipment at the existing Ajiwa Water Works. This is in addition to the construction of new and rehabilitation of existing reservoirs at Ajiwa and Katsina.
The original contract of the Ajiwa gives birth to about 13 different contracts. That is from the initial contract of 2.17 billion, which is the scope of the contract. It talks about the new treatment plan, some of the electrical components and modernized components. But today, when the contractor and the consultant opened the entire sector, it needed total overhauling.
To improve quality and ensure uninterrupted water supply, power injection substation is being constructed, while 2 brand new electricity generating sets have been procured to attain optimal utilization of the waterworks upon completion.
The next thing is the spillway expansion of the dam. With the opening of the bridge to be a 2 cars will go, the water channel is going to be expanded. The dam will expand. That's a contract that of over 3.something billion we signed. And we handle the contractor, the site. Now the machine are over. The civil work is almost 90%. So now the Katsina State people has future on water.
Another success story is the contract for the water distribution network in Katsina City, hitting about 89% completion stage. Residents of Katsina hold Governor Aminu Bello Masari in high esteem and believe that his being a professional in the field will ensure that they will have enough water for drinking and other domestic purposes before the end of his tenure in 2023. This is the first time I'm hearing this, and if it is true, the government is doing something anywhere to provide lasting solution to acute water shortage in Katsina. We will appreciate it. Our number 1, 2, 3 problems are water shortage. The project is long overdue. People have been suffering in silence, and this is one project that has been underreported. Solving our water problem in Katsina is like giving us a new lease of life. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
There you go, the report from Yamadi from Katsina, touching about the importance of water, the relevance of water to the sustenance of life and livelihood cannot be overemphasized. And I'm sure the case of Katsina can be likened to several other states in Nigeria. The need, to provide potable drinking water and water that can serve several other needs for mankind. That's what that report is emphasizing there. We would take a short break at this point, and when we return, we would serve you the newspaper headline for this hour. Thank you. Stay with us.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
Thank you for staying tuned to Daybreak on Trust Television. We have now come to that point where we would serve you the newspaper headlines across major national newspapers. as we have them come into the studio at this hour. And as usual, we would begin with the Daily Trust. And on the cover of the Daily Trust this morning, we have the major stories. Ripples as 17 outgoing governors battle to install successors. The battle is getting interesting with the riders. PDP governorship primaries hold Wednesday, APC Thursday. 201 peak ruling party forms, 145 just for PDP tickets. Governor's actions direct assault on democracy, says Professor Kari. You'll find that story on page 5 of the Daily Trust. And right here on the cover of the Daily Trust is the story of the incidents in Day yesterday. You would find pictures of burned down vehicles and vandalized truck. Apparently, the truck that was involved in the incident, and other pictures of mobs, gathering after that clash between traders and Okada riders. And according to the Daily Trust, in a major belt here, below the pictures, 8 Fed killed. That's traders, Okada riders clash. In Abuja, you'll find that story on page 24. And below those, you'll find how Niger's yam farmers negotiate with terrorists to access fields. Malami Talent Silva readmitted to the Federal Executive Council. That story is on page 8. 80 billion fraud. FG suspends Accountant General Idris. You'll find that story on page 27. And directly below the name marks, you'll find the stories. Convention, Oshibajo promises Niger delegates free hotels and feeding. This is becoming interesting. Everybody seems to be providing one kind of what would you call it? Goodwill, if you like, to these electorates in a bid to win them over to their side. That story you'll find on page 15 of the Daily Trust. And you have Kanu political equation changes as Shekarau joins Kwankwaso in NNPP. Interesting stuff for you on the front page of the Daily Trust, especially the headline here with 17 governors making attempts to replace themselves. The need to continue to remain relevant to power even long after they had quitted an office seem to be taking the attention, seems to be getting the attention of everyone this morning. 17 of them who are also interested in other offices are now jostling to also succeed themselves in their current offices, and that is causing ripples right across the party fibers. And here, of course, we understand that 145 just for PDP tickets, and that's huge. And 201 peak ruling parties form. Amazing interest we seem to be getting from the stables of both the ruling party and the major opposition party this morning. And like I said earlier, you find pictures of the incidents from yesterday. We hope, as reported earlier in our report this morning, that the situation is completely under control and the authorities can do something to at least nip this in the bud. As you will find on the back page of the Daily Trust today, we have a leaching problem. It does appear that with every little problem, we seem to lose lives, and that is reducing the premium that we place on life. The security agencies have to wake up to their responsibility to arrest these kind of situations before they degenerate to loss of life and property, as we have seen in the case of Day this morning. Moving on to other papers, we will take the Business Day this morning. The Business Day seemed to be leading with stories outside the political arena, and the major stories here basically read: Nigeria's fiscal FS woes set to linger beyond 2022. You have other stories right there on the front page. Airlines raise minimum fares above 50,000 as fuel crisis persists. The problem of Jet A1 fuel, as we have seen in the last week, have refused to go away despite several meetings between the Parliament and the airline operators of Nigeria, and the plea by the Ministry of Aviation to have them find solution to this seem not to be finding any stable grounds. Now we are hearing that 50,000 naira will be the minimum base fee, to fly anywhere within Nigeria. We have other stories coming in from the business day. Seplat, ExxonMobil's $1.2 billion deal delayed on politics. Apparently everyone is taking a backseat and looking at the scene and trying to see what happens before they commit huge funds into the Nigerian economy. Total Energy appoints bank to sell stake in Nigeria's assets, all in the quest, to diversify from this market. A lot of upstream players seem to be, making moves, to exit the Nigerian economy for other climes. Low demand, other forcing manufacturer to cut production. Yeah, low demand because there are loads of competing variables for the meager incomes by individuals, and clearly that is already taking toll on manufacturing. As you can see, a lot of manufacturers are beginning to slow down, and the implication for that would also be a cut on jobs because if you are not selling, then there will be obviously no need to produce, and in turn you have to declare redundancy, and that will mean people going home and not earning more money. We move on to the Leadership newspaper this morning, and on the cover of the Leadership this morning, we have the major story: 16 days to INEC deadline. APC, PDP in game of hide and seek over primaries. Clearly, the riders there read, 24 hours after opposition parties' adjustment of activity, governing parties reschedules timetable. We are not bothered by APC's antics, says PDP. Race between Amechi and me, says Badaru. Atiku vows to crush bandits. Kwankwaso Shekarau form alliance against APC and PDP in Kano. What's interesting about this alliance is the fact that both leaders seem to have emerged from the APC and the PDP, and today they are joining forces to dump the party that gave them opportunity to serve at the highest level. It will be interesting to see how this alliance, take life, and how much of that stake it is able to take from the ruling forces in Kano State. An interesting hide and seek. Every party here clearly seems to be marking each other, and nobody wants to take a step that would give a clue. It's like putting your cards out and allowing your opponent, to read your step and then take moves to counter them. It's going to be an interesting 16 days to INEC deadline, one that I'm sure all of the media newspaper houses in Nigeria will be taking steps to keep tabs on. Other stories on the cover of the Leadership newspaper, at the top right above the nameplate, you find PMB to decide returning minister's fate. That's according to the federal government. But interestingly, other papers are reading, disclosed this morning, as we saw with the Daily Trust, that Malemi, Talen, and Silva have been readmitted into FEC. And we have the story from the Accountant General. Alleged 80 billion fraud. FG suspends Accountant General. That is also on the front page of Leadership. FG approves 169 billion private sector investments in roads. This should be coming from the Ministry of Works and Housing under the tax program, of the federal government. Then we also have other stories from here. Abuja timber market burnt over woman's death. Fidelity Bank to support SME yielding results. You find stories of that case, that incident from the clash yesterday in Day. A number of those pictures as different from the ones that were captured by Daily Trust. Put together, you will begin to understand the magnitude of damage and the loss, not just to this individual, but to the country at large from the incident in Day. We would take a short break, and when we return, the newspaper review continues. Please stay with us.
necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that. Where you find that they look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that. But in a situation where you find that they look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Thank you for joining us on Daybreak on Trust Television this morning. Now I can breathe a sign of relief. My co-anchor, it's now in the studio, having overcome the initial takeoff challenges from our house. Welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television, if you like, Zainab Bala.
Good morning, Sunday. Good morning, Nigerians. It's nice to have you on the program.
We would move on with the newspaper review at this point, and we are taking the Punch newspaper next. And on the Punch newspaper this morning, the major headline here reads, APC governorship primaries, tough battles in Oyo, Sokoto, Rivers as 44,000 delegates elect candidates. That's going to be really, really huge. Amechi Abe supremacy battle results in gunshots. Chaos. Faction, trade wars, APC denies zoning presidency, shift National Assembly governorship primaries. You find right beneath that the pictures of the governor of Lagos State taking salutes from uniformed men right there on the cover, and next to it is the seized Okadas. Yesterday, the Lagos State government declared a total ban on Okada activities around certain areas of Lagos, owing to the menace that these riders have constituted in a city that is already struggling with access roads for available motorists. And we saw what a mismanaged crisis between Okada riders and other people could cause yesterday in the Federal Capital Territory. And right below those pictures, we have Hausa community seek reversal of Okada ban, promises Shawo lose massive votes.
Oh, wow, that's quite I love you.
Amazing. Everybody, yes, is putting his strong foot forward. Nigerians pay more for kerosene than petrol, according to reports, and you find that on page 22 of the Punch newspaper. Ham sellers slits girlfriend's throat over slippers, dump cup. Wow. This is horrible.
My goodness.
This is horrible. You find that on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper. 727 Nigerian doctors migrate to UK in 5 months.
700, that's huge.
That's a major health crisis. And to think that a labor minister in Nigeria once said that we have excess medical doctors and some of them should move into tailoring. Apparently,
well, it looks like
rather than go to tailoring, they would take their professional skills to other climes where they are needed. The UK, in my estimation, produces far more medical doctors than Nigeria. To think that we're even losing the few that we have to climes like that, I think calls for us to re-examine what's happening in the Nigerian polity. Osun Court affirms Adeleke candidacy. Baba Femi, Baba Yemi to review judgments. You'll find that on page 14. 5-year-old people drowned during swimming lessons. Wow. If it's a swimming lesson, how did that result in drowning? EFCC arrests ex-NDDC boss over 47 billion naira. Wow. Every of the fraud now is in tens of billions of naira. Amazing why we are where we are. Anambra police warns against violence as court denies Kanu bail. You find that on page 7 at the top of the nameplate on the Punch newspaper. 25 presidential aspirants submitted forms, says APC. That's huge. That would be, by 100 million, that would be 2.5 billion naira in for the party in one fell swoop. Jet A1, others may push flights above 100,000 naira. for domestic flights.
Well, I'll say some are already doing that.
We have to go and dust off our vehicles and driving skills again because
That's a huge amount.
This is huge. You'll find this and many more on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Look at those numbers of Okadas on the front page of the Punch. That's huge.
A lot. And you know, even in the capital city, when you look at the daily access, you know, down to Kubwa, you still find quite a number of bikers, you know, on that road. And then sometimes you see police, you know, mopping them up, but at the same time, they still come back.
You don't know whether they go to buy new
places.
bikes or they find a way to bail, if you like, the ones that have been seized. And what is even more alarming is the fact that they don't even use helmet or even reflective jacket. And you see the way they cross those highways, they drive against the traffic, you know. It's basically putting your life in danger. Well, in a bid to survive, whichever way that is available to them. And so sometimes you wonder whether merely just banning these Okada riders, you know, sort of solve the problem rather than provide alternative means of livelihood for them. That's huge. These are the major headlines on the Punch newspaper. So we move on to other papers on the Punch, and this time we will take the News Direct. On the News Direct this morning, it's a different story from all of those that have been paying attention to politics. We have ASU strike, reaction trailed NAN's threat to shut down international airport. We were saying here the last time that this seemed to be escalating. Apparently, they want attention at all costs, and they will get it as this is taking completely different route. We have pictures of the Tinubu's campaign trail as he stopped over at the Sulu Gambari's palace yesterday in Ilorin with major promoters of his campaign, as we could find there. The governor of Kwara State, as well as former governor of Borno State, Shatima, right there in the picture with him. You also find in other stories, APC presidential primary, it is either Amechi or me. No contest between us, Governor Badaru. That would be interesting.
Sounds convincing.
That would be interesting. That he even has an alternative to himself. APC Youth Wing announces Dr. Ohayiri as committee co-chair, invites presidential aspirant to town hall meeting. We have above the nameplate, someone who direct security operative to enforce total ban on Okada. APC fixes new date for primaries, and Honorable Lasson and his warped knowledge of the economy. Apparently there should be an opinion, and you'll find that on page 4 of the News Direct this morning.
Really very interesting story, Sunday.
Indeed.
Now let's take a look at more this time around on This Nigeria. On this paper, the lead story there says 80 billion naira fraud. After suspension, federal government bans Accountant General from visiting office, and then Idris granted bail from custody. Yesterday, I saw quite a number of breakdown. A lot of people were breaking, you know, that money down and what it can do for Nigeria.
Yeah, I liked one of the breakdowns. So somebody said, okay, 30 cents, I think it was, that broke it down to. He said, if you have to spend 50 million naira daily, you know, it will take you 44 years to exhaust 80 billion naira. Wow. If you have to increase the spending to 100 million naira daily, it will take you about 22 years to do that. And they added those number of years to his age at 62. I mean, if you can imagine what that could do. And that is just merely on the part of expenditure. If you begin to drill down on what that can do, we saw a report from Katsina today talking about water supply and all of that. If you have to drill a borehole, you know, in every community, 50 million naira should drill at least 50 boreholes for you. And that would mean you should be able to drill one borehole per community in Nigeria, 774 local government, apparently, with that kind of money. That's huge.
That's a huge sum. You know, some would say he was saving for the future, and then unfortunately.
What future exactly is left for him there? Maybe the future of his children. We hope that somehow we are able to make examples of some of these persons. Look at the case of the NDDC lady. That was the one that was picked up from there for 46 billion. So we are talking about 2 corruption cases of 126 billion naira. How much did ASU needed again to get back to school? Just about
truly, I think I saw
billion.
a comment. Somebody made a comment saying, I think this time around ASU should stay on their words and not go back to the classes, because if Nigeria has that kind of money, then I think we're not getting our priorities right.
We are not. Obviously, we are not.
Okay, let's take a look at some more stories on this Nigeria. You'd see also resignation saga, ministers in a fix, Malami Ngige, others fate hang in the balance. Lai Mohammed, Buhari will soon decide. And then you find other stories on this Nigeria this morning. EFCC arrest ex-NDDC MD Ekere over alleged 47 billion naira fraud. And then you see the story that seems to be on the cover of most of our dailies this morning, the one about Sanwo-Olu announces total ban on Okada riders in 6 local government areas. And then you see a pictorial there that shows you apparently, I think, crime suspects. I don't know actually where. I think the one is in the capital city yesterday. And then gunmen storm Ebonyi local government chair's house, kill 3 relatives, guard. Abuja crisis claim woman, Okada rider. And then you find at the top, talking business, foreign reserve drops below $39 billion despite Naira gains. These are some of the major stories on this Nigeria this morning.
Interesting developments as captured by Amin, but you can't miss the picture there on the cover with those amounts of rifle, you know, on display at the force headquarters yesterday by kidnappers. I mean, if we could find this kind of sophisticated arm making their way into communities, then it portends a sign for big danger, especially as we approach a critical time, the 2023 elections in Nigeria. I don't know what we can do as a country to mop up as many as possible this kind of illegal arms that seem to have found their way into our communities. And then moving on, we would take the national economy. The national economy today has as its major profit concentrating on the economy. Banks 261 billion first quarter profit, sign of post-COVID economic recovery. As CBN issues open banking guideline, they are dwelling today on the first quarter reports of most banks, and 261 billion for an economy that is struggling is a huge amount of money. If the bank would only come together and sign off 100 billion to us, so I'm sure this economy will be better for it.
Well, that sounds like the good news, you know, from all of the bad news happening around the country.
Honestly, we can't afford to be struggling on all fronts. Tax credit scheme, FG, OK's 169 billion for reconstruction of roads. Access Bank emerges best performing stock. You find that on page 5. And FG postponed FAC meeting. Wow, I thought there were approvals yesterday. Which of them is postponed? The one for next week or the one that has already you will get the details of that in the national economy. And of course, the story on most headlines, on most newspapers this morning, the Accountant General suspended over alleged 80 billion naira fraud.
Well, Sunday, you know, there seems to be a lot of, you know, declarations recently about fraud. Some were saying, is it because the elections are coming through, or what really is happening? Why now? Why are we seeing all of those declarations
every time
now?
Around the election period, I think we seem to be hearing so much about fraud. But the only difference in this case is that it is not the politicians that have been picked. Or maybe the ones that have been picked are politicians in disguise. We don't know, because at some point, I think some platform rumored that the Accountant General was eyeing the Kano State governorship race. And then his tenure was extended graciously by the president. He's 62. He should have left 2 years ago. But somehow he got the nod of the president to continue. And we are not sure whether this 80 billion was over a period of 8 years. I mean, a period that he served, or it was just within this period of his extension. I mean, if it was within the period of extension, then it means if we look back, we may be looking at more than 80 billion. And to think that he has started this money around real estate in Abuja and Kano means some of those empty houses we are seeing around, we are beginning to honor the landlords.
Truly. Truly, that's quite
and then we take a final paper for the morning, and that will be the Nation newspaper for today. The Nation newspaper of course, is leading with stories around politics. And here it says, why APC changed date for governorship and other primaries. One of the papers described it as hide and seek. They move, the major opposition moves, and then they adjust, the other people adjust as well. You find that as a major story on the Nation newspaper. And above the nameplate, you find Malami Ngige Silva, talent, soon to know faith. More endorsement for Tinubu in Kwara and Benue. Again, Lagos restricts Okada operations in 6 council. Ongoing legal battle likely to delay Alaafin's selection. And below the major headline, we have 47 billion probe. EFCC detained as NDDC MD Ekere. And below that here, court clears Adeleke as PDP candidate. 5 die in Abuja market fire. And we have also that story from the police headquarters with the display of arms and arrests made over people who are into kidnapping and all sorts of vices. Lockdown in 30 states over Nnamdi Kanu. Judge detains IPOB, denies IPOB leader bail. The case of Nnamdi Kanu continued to linger, clearly with no end in sight, as we have seen. Maybe till another day in court, and because of that, yesterday we saw the activities in the entire southeast were grounded. In fact, up to places like Delta, and some killings were even carried out. We hope somehow we find. Yes, I mean the escalation is too much for people who have to work every day to earn their daily bread. You can imagine how much damage this whole sit-at-home saga, is causing on them. We will take a short break at this point. We'll return at the top of the hour to serve you more on the program. Please stay with us.
Sunana Babiyon Dalladin Senior, ni dan Gombe ne. Gaskiya na kai akalla shekara 6 zuwa 7 da ina aikin mota. Gaskiya na yi sha'awar mota a lokacin da nake leburanci, aikin mesin, abin da ya shafi a caba, na yi aikin nafe, na zo kuma na koma babbar mota, na kuma yi sa'a na haɗu mai gida na gari, yana koya mun, yana haƙuri da ni ma na haƙuri da shi, haka muka zauna, Allah isa ya koya mun mota. To a gaskiya kuma na samu bambanci sosai a sana'an da na yi baya da kuma wanda nake yi yanzu, alhamdulillah. Na farko dai ina yin sana'an ne, sai kuma Allah isa iya wannan time din ne cin abinci na wannan, sai na kaura daga wajen na sake komawa wancan. Shi ma na zo na yi, shi ma Allah isa iya wannan time din ne kawai zan yi hanyar cin abinci na tsaya a wajen. Sai kuma na dawo aikin mota, wadda kuma na kai shekara ina ga yanzu 6 ko 7 ina yin aikin mota. Gaskiya sana'a na da ina karkashin wani ne, sai abin da ya faɗa kuma kullum in na fita da safe zuwa wuni ne na dawo gida, sai a ɗauki abin da za a bani a ɗauka a bani. To a yanzu kuma gaskiya mota gashin kaina nake ci tunda an ɗauki motar an damƙa mun. To alhamdulillah gaskiya akwai na samu bambanci sosai akan aiki na da. Gaskiya a bangaren aikin babbar mota, idan za ka yi shi na farko sai ka cire tsoro, sannan kuma sai ka cire tunanin wahala, saboda ita babbar mota gaskiya dole akwai wahala a ciki sosai. Duk da kowane sana'a akwai wahala, amma ita ma aikin mota akwai wahala, sannan kuma babu zama a gida akai-akai gaskiya. To har ga Allah in kai haƙuri duk za ka zo ka ci riba a hankali a hankali. Tun muna tunanin ba mu san me ake samu ba, ba mu san me ribansa ba, har Allah ya kawo mu yanzu muka san me amfanin aikin babbar mota, kuma muka ci gaba da zama, kuma muna tunanin insha Allah za mu ci gaba da rike shi hannu da hannu, hannu 10 za mu rike shi gaskiya, saboda muna samun albarka a ciki sosai. Idan na tashi nakan je gun lodi, idan mota na lafiya da abokan aiki na nakan je na yi aiki, in na je na yi lodi na kama hanya, idan garin da zan tafi da nisa nakan wuni na kwana ina tafiya. In kaga na tsaya zan yi sallah zan ci abinci shikenan kuma sai kuma wani larurin da wanda ba a rasa ba in ya kama dole. To a hakan ma akwai gun da ba ma tsayuwa wanda in mun tsaya wani gurin ana kama mu doka ne, ko da lokacin sallah mukan haƙura da sallan mu wuce wannan gurin saboda cutuwa za mu yi, sai mun je mun hada sai mu hada azhar da la'asar wato kasaru kenan, ko kuma lokacin sallan isha da magariba mu hada. To idan mun je mun gurin saukewa anan zaka samu kai bacci kafin a sauke ma, in kana da wadda yake zuwa ma saukewa kai ka samu wani guri ka huta kai wanka ka ci abinci kai bacci ka rage. Kannan sun sauke sun dawo kuma ka tafi lodi, su suke zuwa lodi. In sun dawo nan ma ka ɗauki mota ka kama hanya daga Lagos zuwa su Ibadan zuwa su Ondo zuwa su Kogi State ka zo Abuja kuma sai ka sauka su tafi lodi su tafi saukewa kuma. To haka dai aikin mota muke wuni muke kwana, mukan yi wata ɗaya wata biyu, wani kafin ya je gida, wani duk kwayan 30 zai je gida, wani sai ya yi wata biyu, wani ma yana wata 3-4, wani ma 6 yake yi sannan ya tafi gida. Gaskiya na zuwa yankin Taraba, yankin Maiduguri, abin da ya shafi su Biu, su Pikail, muna ɗauko wake, muna zuwa ɓangaren Adamawa Mubi, muna ɗauko kayan Onacha, muna zuwa Taraba su Garba Shede su Mai Hula, muna ɗauka zuwa Kalaba, zuwa Onacha, zuwa Abba, Port Harcourt. Sannan daga nan Kogi State muna ɗauka mu je Sokoto, muna shiga Nijar, abin da ya shafi irin su Gada, Ilela, sai kuma muna dawowa mu shiga su Kano, Jigawa, mu tafi dai su Lagos, su Ondo, su Osun, su Ogun State. Duk dai yankinmu dai muna tafiya dai gaskiya gurare daban-daban. A gaskiya ni har ga Allah duk inda na je yawo ban taɓa samun wata matsala ba. Ubangijin Allah yana tsare ni. Na je lafiya na dawo lafiya, kuma ina godewa Ubangijin Allah da ya tsare ni. Sakamakon akwai matsaloli a hanya kan da yawa. To amma wannan matsaloli abin da ya shafi barayi ko yankin nafin duk dai wannan in Allah haɗa ka da su baka da makawa sai ka haɗu da su. In Allah ya kiyaye ka da su shikenan, da kuma hukuma da sauransu. Idan kuma Allah ya sa su ma suna da rabo na abincinsu a ɓangaren ka sai sun haɗu da kai sun karɓa. In ba su da shi kuma shikenan Allah ya raba ku. In za ka yi aikin mota sai ka cire tsoro, sai kuma ka cire tunanin wahala, sakamakon wata jihan za ka je ka samu ana rikici kai baka sani ba ka zo ka haura, to kuma sai yadda Allah ya yi da kai. Idan Allah ya haɗa ka da su, in kuɗi suka nema kana da shi ka ba su, in baka da shi shikenan, duk abin da suka ma hukuncin da suka ma shikenan, kai bayan da ka iya. In kuma Allah ya sa sun samu kuɗi sun barka shikenan ka kama hanya ka tafi, su ma rabonsu suka ci. Ya taɓa faruwa da abokanayana sosai, an tare su da bindigogi ko hanyar cikin Osun State zuwa daga Ilesha Express zuwa Ife zuwa Ibadan. Wani lokaci sukan fito suna ɗan tarewa, wadda Allah ya ciyar da su same su karɓa, wanda kuma Allah bai ciyar da shi ba ya zo ya wuce lafiya. Amma ni dai gaskiya har ga Allah ya tsare ni. Soja da polisa muna haɗuwa da su akan hanya, kuma suna taimakon mu muna taimakon su, saboda su ma suna ɗan samu a wajen mu ma kuma suna tare mana wasu abubuwan muna samu muna wucewa. To alhamdulillah dai duk inda ka samu robulon akwai kayan da zaka ɗauko zaka ba su wani abu, akwai kayan da zaka ɗauko ba ruwansu da kai. In ka zo me ka ɗauko suka tabbatar dai kayan ba laifi ba kayan doka bane sai su barka ka wuce. Gaskiya ni makarantar Islamiyya na yi, ban yi na boko ba. Burina a rayuwa gaskiya ina da buri in ga na yi a sana'ata, mai da hankali a kai, in yi wa godiya ga Ubangiji da kuma wanda ya kirawo ni ya bani motar, shi ma wato ya ce ka zo mu taru mu ci abinci mu rufa kanmu asiri. Shine na yi wa Allah godiya, na masa godiya da ya ɗauki dukiyar sai ya damƙa mun amana har na tafi kuma nake nemowa nake kawowa kuma yana bani haƙƙina, alhamdulillah. Ina mai musu addu'a, sannan ina fatan Allah ya sa sana'a na ta ci gaba da ɗaurewa, in samu in yi nawa na kaina kamar yadda su ma iyayen gidana suka yi, ko da ban samu haka ba da in samu na rufin asiri, in riƙe gidana da iyalina, in gina gida nawa na kaina, ni ma in Allah ya buɗa mun in samu motocin in yi, in ci kuma gaba da taimakon 'yan uwana na ƙasa da ni wadda suka neman taimako. A gaskiya har ga Allah shi aikin mota duk yaron da ka zo inda yaron mai tarbiyya ne ya zo ya bi yana ƙasanka, ya kamata da kai da shi duka ku haɗu ku taimaki juna. Idan kai kana taimakon su ta wani bangaren a matsayin mai gidansu, su ma akwai ta inda suke taimakon ka a matsayin su na yaranka wanda kuma abokanan aiki ne. Sannan kuma ita sana'a in Allah ya sa ka samu, kar ka yi wa yashi waɗansu wanda ba su kai ba, ko kuma kana kai babba ne ka ci gaba da zarafin su, ko kana cutan su, ko kana nuna musu wani a'a. Shi Allah yakan iya jarraban ka, su ya fifita su, kai kuma ka dawo ƙasa kuma ka zo kana bauta musu. To ka riƙe su da amana, iya daidai gwargwado dai gaskiya muna yi musu, saboda su ma muna so su tashi kamar yadda mu ma muka zama wani abu lokacin da muke karkashin wasu. Muna so su ma su tashi su ci gaba da su ma su zama iyayen gidan wasu, kuma su ma su koya wani, kuma a zauna lafiya, a taimaki juna, a ci gaba da addinin musulunci da bauta wa Ubangiji da Annabi Muhammadu sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ko da baka saba ba, a yau da gobe dole sai ka saba, domin in aikinka ne dole ka ɗauke shi aiki, ka sa shi a zuciyanka. Ina iya tashi daga karfe 6 na safe in wuni ina tafiya, in kwana ina tafiya, in har ban je inda zan sauke kaya ba in sake wuni kuma. Kai in kwana 3 ya kama zan iya yi ina tafiya, sai dai in na ji bacci ina da safiya na wadda zai karbe ni nima in kwanta in yi bacci ana tafiya. In kuma a'a mota ta samu matsala, wannan ya zama dole ba za ta tafi mu tsaya. In a jeji ne ya kama mu kwana a jeji, inda rana ne mu nemo makaniki ya zo ya mana gyara mu tafi kuma. A gaskiya ina kira ga gwamnati da shugabanninmu, Allah ya sa musu albarka, Allah ya ƙara musu daraja da wadata. Muna neman alfurma a wajensu su duba yanayin hanyoyinmu da suke Najeriya, majority bamu da hanyoyi, su taimaka su gyara mana hanya. Sakamakon gaskiya muna shan wahala, gurin da ya kamata kai awa 5 sai ka yi wuni, in ta kama ma ka kwana, sakamakon rashin hanya. Sannan kuma ga abubuwan matsalolin da ake fama da su. To muna neman dai taimako da alfurma gurin gwamnoni su gyara mana hanyoyi, saboda mu nan ne hanyar neman abincinmu.
Coronavirus disease, COVID-19, is an infectious disease caused by SARS-CoV-2 virus. Most people who fall sick with COVID-19 will experience mild to moderate symptoms and recover without special treatment. However, some will become seriously ill and require medical attention. The virus can spread from an infected person's mouth or nose in small liquid particles when they cough, sneeze, speak, sing, or breathe. These particles range from larger respiratory droplets to smaller aerosols. You can be infected by breathing in the virus if you're near someone who has COVID-19, or by touching a contaminated surface and then touching your eyes, nose, or mouth. The virus spreads more easily indoors and in crowded settings. Maintain a safe distance from others, at least 2 meters, even if they don't appear to be sick. Wear a mask in public, especially indoors or when physical distancing is not possible. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay home if you feel unwell. Get vaccinated. Properly fitted masks can help prevent the spread of the virus from the person wearing the mask to others. Masks alone do not protect against COVID-19 and should be combined with physical distancing and hand hygiene. Protect yourself and others around you by knowing the facts and taking appropriate precautions. Follow advice provided by your local health authority. This message is brought to you by Trust TV.
Every patriotic Nigerian should hear this. Any politician who means well for the people will never allow themselves or their supporters to engage in any violent, destructive activities. No politician who truly wants to serve the people and develop the nation will encourage his followers to destroy properties or take human lives before, during, or after the elections. The Nigerian public must watch out for these traits and isolate any politician who encourages supporters to engage in violence. No genuine politician or patriot will cause trouble and seek to destroy the very society which they aspire to lead or develop. Politicians who have the good of the people at heart will not allow themselves or their followers to engage in violence, destruction of properties, and then taking of lives. Be vigilant. By their words you shall know them. Shun violence. Stay away from politicians who want you to do so. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NORA.
Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital city. I'm Zainab Bala. It's 7 a.m. here in the capital city.
Indeed, 7 a.m. and a beautiful one here in the capital city. I am Sunday Michael Ogu. Thanks for staying with us.
Our headlines for you this morning. Police operatives arrest 31, recover 61 firearms, others in the FCT.
Alleged 80 billion fraud, accountant general suspended indefinitely.
5 killed as traders Okada riders clash in Abuja.
FEC approves 3.49 billion for aviation ministries building. Now the major story at this, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, has suspended the Accountant General of the Federation, Mr. Ahmed Idris, over the allegations by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission that he laundered over 80 billion naira. Daily Trust gathered that the minister directed that Idris should proceed on indefinite suspension pending the outcome of the investigation. The AFCC arrested Idris early in the week following verified intelligence that he allegedly raked off the funds through bogus consultancy and other illegal activities using proxies, family members, and close associates. The Commission spokesperson Wilson Uwejerim, in a statement, said the funds were laundered through real estate investments in Kano and Abuja.
Operatives of the Force Intelligence Bureau Special Tactical Squad have arrested 31 suspects in connection with kidnapping, culpable homicide, rape, and unlawful possession of firearms, etc. The FIBSCS equally recovered a total of 61 firearms, including 41 AK rifles, 8 Type 06 rifles, 4 light assault rifles, and 4 pump-action guns. Others are 2 locally made firearms, 1 G3 rifle, 1 Dane gun, 376 rounds of live ammunition of different calibers, and cash sum of 2 million naira from the suspects. Prominent among the cases include a case of kidnapping where the duo of Amir Lawal aka Kanu and Murtala Dao aka Mugala, both working in synergy with the kidnap kingpin known as Yellow Ashana, confessed to the kidnap and murder of 2 police officers and 1 vigilante in 2021.
Finland and Sweden on Wednesday handed India bids to join NATO after Russia's invasion of Ukraine upended decades of military non-alignment. The applications were warmly received by most allies, but Turkey raised objections and the ambassadors' meeting in Brussels failed to reach a consensus on starting formal membership negotiations. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg had promised the process will be swift and smooth, but Turkey would have to be mollified before the ratifications can take place. The members' push could represent the most significant expansion of NATO in decades.
Now let's move on to other stories. The Federal High Court, Abuja, strikes out a newly amended 6-count charge preferred against Nnamdi Kanu by the federal government following the withdrawal of the charge by the federal government. The withdrawal came after Mark Ezekwemi complained to the court that the prosecution is trying to delay processes by continuous amendments of the charge against the client. Ezekwemi told the court that this is the 7th time the federal government is amending its charge. Justice Binta Nyako concurred to Ezekwemi's submission, stating that Kanu is not expected to take plea on those newly amended charges immediately, and he needs time to digest them before doing so. Mardia Umar was there.
The much-awaited date for the bail application hearing of the Indigenous People of Biafra's leader, IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, is today, but it didn't start without a little bit of drama, as some supporters of the IPOB leader were seen around the court and they were dispersed with tear gas by the security agents who were on ground, gallantly on ground, to make sure that citizens follow law and order in the court premises. That's the Federal High Court premises. Today was set aside for bail application, but according to the Defense Council, the government sprang up with a surprise, and this, they say, has happened for the 7th time. In the government's motion, they moved the motion that struck out 1 charge out of the 7 charges that is still left for the Indigenous People of Biafra's leader. Recall that in the last sitting, which happened in the month of April, but the court presided over by Justice Binta Murtala Nyako, struck out 8 charges out of the 15. So right now, what they are having this storm of issues about in the court today was the fact that this came out in the wee hours of the night, and it didn't give them time to actually serve this to the Defense Council. It created a storm quite well in the courtroom. And right now, what is going to happen is that these charges will remain the way it is, because it's going to be 7. And according to the Defense Council, he said that if they accept this 6-count charge, it might mean that they will have to go for a new plea, which might not be favorable for them. So the bail application, of course, today has been denied, but not completely denied, because in the wisdom of the court, they have to sit again and listen to the full story why Nnamdi Kanu skipped trial in the year 2017. And until they hear the whole story, they cannot make a decision. But the date, the story continues, or the court sitting continues, or stayed adjourned to the 26th of May 2022. Martia Umar, Trust TV News, Abuja.
And there you go. In other news, the Director General of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, Bashir Jamo, says the growth potentials of the maritime stakeholders for the industry would only be realized through the development of a system of harmonized port state control inspection producers for West Africa and Central Africa. The NIMASA DG stated this while addressing Chief Executive of all Maritime Administration, signatory to the Abuja MOU at the International Maritime Organization's workshop on port state control for West and Central Africa region for the heads of maritime administration in Lagos. Abbas Ibrahim Alibi now reports.
The Director General of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, who was represented by the agency's Executive Director, Operations, Mr. Shehu Ahmed, identified the importance of effective port state control system to the efficient running of member state maritime administrations.
The shipping industry in our respective countries needs us to be fully and regularly on top of our game, especially as regulators, who must always be a step ahead of never-ending challenges that beheast the global seaborne trade whether it's maritime security or the safety of shipping and capacity building.
According to him, port state control provisions are featured in the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea provision under the duties and responsibilities of flag state, coastal state, and port state, and it is also highlighted under enforcement in all major IMO and some ILO conventions.
On our part, we continue to work with Abuja MOU, the Federal Ministry of Transportation, and IMO to ensure that the port state control regime achieve the set objective.
Bashir Jamo added that NIMASA executes 4 legal instruments in keeping with international obligations, which include the Maritime Shipping Act, the Cabotage Act, and most recent being the SPOMO Act for the suppression of piracy and other maritime offenses. Also speaking at the event was the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Transportation, Dr. Magdalene Ajani, who represents the Vice Chairman of Abuja MOU, and Honorable Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi.
This brings us to other reasons for the training, which is to improve the networking loop of all the maritime administrations in our region, recalling that there might be the need at any time, a need to seek the assistance of the next member state to apprehend an errant vessel.
On his part, the Secretary General of the Abuja MOU, Captain Sunday Omorin, identified the need for continuous capacity building and networking initiative in order to gain the support of top maritime administrations, thereby promoting productive working relationships, which will in turn benefit the maritime industry in member states as well as collectively.
Port state control is a critical element in trade facilitation and by extension, the quality of shipping and shipping services in the region with direct implications of, if you may, direct consequences to national economies.
Captain Omorin also disclosed that only 14 countries are presently conducting inspection in the region and called for a campaign for effective inspection regime with focus on standard of training, certification, and watchkeeping. Abbas Ibrahim Alibi, Trust TV, Lagos.
With that report from Alibi from Lagos, we wrap up the news highlights for this morning. We will take a short break, and when we return, we will serve you details of the newspaper review with our reviewer already in the studio. Please stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that a look like this,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
Thank you for staying with us on Daybreak on Trust Television this morning. It's that time of the day where we serve you not just the headlines, but details, analysis, and perspective as provided by our guest analyst in the studio. And this morning, we have no other than the general editor of Daily Trust newspaper, Malam Hanza Idris, who has joined us this morning to serve you very informed and enlightened perspectives on our newspaper reviews. Good morning and welcome. And thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
You're looking quite sporty this morning, I'm sure. I'm sure it promises to be a very warm and easy day, away from the types that are riddled with so much meetings and all of that. Thanks again for being with us. This morning we start as usual with the Daily Trust newspaper. And the major headline on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning reads, Ripples at 17 outgoing governors battle to install successors. We never go away from anything empty-handed, I guess. The riders there read, PDP governors primaries hold Wednesday, APC Thursday, 201 peak ruling party forms, 145 for PDP. If you sum those numbers together, you'll be talking about 345. That's a massive number. Everybody wants to move into the government house, if you like. Governors' Action, Direct Assault on Democracy, and that's by Professor Kari. You'll find these and many more on page 5 of Daily Trust this morning. And right below that major headline is the story from the unfortunate incidents yesterday at the Dede area of the FCT, where you have a conglomeration of so many activities from metal scrapping to timber and other building material markets, and a tip-off of an incident from an Okada rider resulting in that amount of damage, that colossal amount of damage, and as reported by the Daily Trust, also leading to the death of about 8 persons. So the story reads here: 8 fared killed as traders, Okada riders clash in Abuja. You'll find the details of that story on page 24. And directly below those major headlines, how Niger yam farmers negotiate with terrorists to access fields. That story is on page 39. Malami Talent, Silva readmitted into FEC. Interesting journey. 1 minute you're a presidential candidate, and the next minute you are serving in the current government. I'm not sure which came first. Was it that they did not evaluate their chances before making the pronouncement, or they just had 100 million naira free money to spare the party primaries? We'll find out this and many more when we talk to our in-house analyst. And you have other stories there. 80 billion fraud. FG suspends Accountant General. That story is on page 27. And directly below the name marks, convention, Oshibajo promises Niger delegates free hotels and feeding. Interesting.
Well, sounds
so,
like
well, let's see how long this free hotel and feedings will last. Kano political equation changes as Shekarau joins Kwankwaso in NNPP. Been seeing videos of people carrying bananas and watermelon and whatever in their heads everywhere in the social media. And I was wondering, we will get details of this and many more. And like I said, joining us in the studio is the general editor of the Daily Trust newspaper. We will start with perspective on the Daily Trust cover today. What does this mean for outgoing governors to be interested in installing, would you call them stooge? Or success, to replace them. What are they afraid of? Why is it impossible to just serve out your time and move on? And allow the kind of process that brought you in to also determine, or in fact, allow the people to determine for themselves among the array of contestants. And we have so many of them, just from 2 parties, 345 of them. What is difficult in allowing that system play out itself?
Yes, from the figures there, you have an average of 20-point-something candidates.
Per state?
Yeah, per state. 20 if you put those aspiring under the ruling party and then others from the leading opposition. This excludes aspirants from smaller political parties. Yes, so maybe if you put, because you have around 18 or thereabout, who that will participate in the electioneering. So maybe up to 40 per state if you include, because maybe PRP, NNPP, and all the other political parties, they will have their own. But we concentrated on these two without prejudice to the chances of others, because some analysts are saying any of the smaller parties that is serious will actually surprise the ruling party and the opposition party, because the argument is that Nigerians are looking for alternative because of one reason or the other. This is one. The question you ask, I think it is the way we handle it here in Nigeria, because all over the world, people would like to have worthy successors. But maybe our approach is the problem. You can see the APC and PDP, they keep playing mouse, cat and mouse. Yeah, because APC ought to have, start, final preparation for theirs tomorrow. But at the late hours yesterday, in fact, we were rounding up our production when we gathered that, they have moved theirs to next week. They want the PDP to do theirs first. Probably by the time they do theirs, then maybe they will change some of their aspirants. And the problem is that some of the governors, based on our findings, some years ago, you know, they promised many other people, okay, I will give you, if you support me, I will give you, if you allow me to have my way. So they congested the terrain, and now they are approaching the point of no return. Yes, because we narrowed our analysis to 17 governors who can never be governors again. Because the Constitution said you can't be governor 3 times. So these 17, they are rounding up their last and, you know, final tenure. Yes. So many of them are really confused. Yes, while lamenting that they will leave the government house, they are also thinking of carrying on with rulership, if I can use this word, by proxy. So in some places, the governors pick their deputies. In some places, they picked speakers of the state assembly. In some places, they pick
complete outlier.
Yes, senator from, you know, who are in Abuja. And in some places, they went and picked the so-called technocrats.
You know, some people have also said that these governors are hell-bent on installing, you know, successors to cover their dirty game. Are you of that opinion as well?
But do they really cover the dirty game? Because the only exception we have so far in the history of Nigeria is Borno, where for 4 years, the governor and his predecessor remain on the same page. But I remember, I think ahead of 2019, we did a thorough investigation that since 1979, there was no governor that enforced his will on the electorate and then continue to have his way. You see the governors immediately after the handover, they will start having problem with the person they bring. Because while they want to continue to lead or to rule by proxy, the new chief executive, once he gets into the government house and, you know, understand the workings of the executive and the enormous powers around him,
he just snaps.
Including the hangers-on, who will always also want to have their way, you know, because they will talk to him that, look, you are the chief executive. Why should we enforce commissioners on you? Why must he tell you that you should give contract to A, B, and C? Why will he tell you to give him the details of the FAC allocation and then advise you on how to spend it? Yeah. I think you should draw a line. Then you will see them fighting. And how many governors have we produced from 1999 today? Meaning it's a big lesson for the wise. But as I said, even in advanced democracy, you can see, I think we saw how America's president, you know, campaign for their successors.
Yes.
But you see them not enforcing their will on other members. You see them on the same page, you know, then campaigning for one among them to succeed the outgoing president or outgoing governor. But here, it's just overnight. You see a governor, you know, saying, okay, this is my anointed son. And then before you know, they will start fighting.
Really very interesting stories. Another story, you know, that there's everywhere, you know, on our playlist this morning is the incident that happened yesterday in Dede. Some people have said that one of the drivers to that, riots that happened there was the issue of Deborah Samuel.
It is very sad that Nigerians now think that nobody is there for them. They are angry and they transfer aggression.
Slightest provocation.
Yeah, because if you put side by side, I will not dismiss it, but you can see it's like transferring aggression. You know, how many kilometers between Sokoto and Abuja? If not for the proactive intervention, yes, of security operators. I want to commend them, honestly, because I was discussing with a prominent person 2 or 3 days ago. He said, despite their shortcomings, if not for the proactiveness of our security, we said that they are always late to this thing, but yesterday's event, I can assure you, if not for their proactiveness, it would have snowballed and consumed Abuja and then spiral to neighboring states. Because, of course, the Okada rider was accused of recklessness, which led to the death of his passenger. Now, some people descended on him because of his identity. And then his fellow riders went there to protect him. They also descended on those people. And before you know, many vehicles destroyed, 9 lives lost. Property worth millions of dollars. You can see the photos. We couldn't use...
Some are quite gory.
Yes, so we only shot this to serve as lesson that you can't correct wrong with wrong.
Right.
Yes, but Nigerians feel that the justice system is really not favorable. So rather than waiting for the intervention of, let me say, the judiciary, they just take laws into their hands because they believe that something that should be resolved within, let's say, 1 week, it will take 10 years. People will even forget about the case. So some, they feel that the best, which is, of course, not the right thing to do, is to, take the laws into their hand and then descend on anybody they feel that has offended.
That's an unfortunate incident from yesterday. And I mean, it wasn't just with Day. We were hearing of a similar thing in Lagos only about 24, 48 hours ago of somebody that was wrongfully accused of being a Yahoo, and they descended and killed him. And the friend who went to intervene was also killed. It's the cases of leeching as captured in the back page of the Daily Trust this morning by Abubakar Adam Ibrahim. Simply more than captures it. We have a leeching problem, incidentally, in Nigeria, and we have to find ways. The laws would have to find way to make example of these persons, to discourage further incidences. Before we leave the Daily Trust for other papers this morning, I quickly want a reaction to one of the stories also on the political sphere of Kano political equation changes as Shekarau joins Kwankwaso. What does this exactly mean for, one was of the APC, the other was of the PDP. Now, they changed places. Now they are joining forces to fight.
I think this is the mother of all realignments. Yes, if you look at the relationship between Shekarau and Kwankwaso, nobody, maybe a year back will think that they will come
under one umbrella.
Yes, under one umbrella because of the nature of their politics. They don't really cohabitate under the same
roof.
Yes, serious suspicion. Yes, I don't know. Is it ideology? I think it's survival of the fittest. They are now. They want to fight a common enemy. But you can see Ganduje is also not relenting in his effort. Because he conceded a lot to some people when he realized that, and he worked very hard to stop Shekarau from moving to NNPP. You earlier mentioned, you know, the logo of NNPP, you know, variety of
fruits. Yes.
Yes, but we don't know what will happen. But you know, Kano is a serious place considering the population, considering it is the vote bank of the north, and it's a swing state of sort. Yes, it's a swing state, and politicians, not even within Kano, even in other places, they look, up to Kano to fine-tune what they do. People are saying with the encroachment of NNPP in Kano, it will be a serious battle for APC because they have to do a lot. It's a long election cycle.
It is.
You know, we have about how many months now?
About 7 months, 8
7,
months.
8 months or 9 to the D-Day. So anything can happen. But here, because Kano is our market, yes, and then we believe whatever happens in Kano will be reflected or replicated in many other places. That is why we keep our, you know,
tabs.
Yes, on Kano. We cover Kano thoroughly. But it's an interesting state, and you need to go to Kano because that smaller political parties are really making headway. I was told the history of NNPP, but that should be story for another day.
Interesting. We would continue to keep tabs on development from Kano. Interestingly, like you said in your opening statements, people are yearning for a different proposition.
Right.
And maybe NNPP is one of those. I'm tempted to call it NNPC. It's one of those propositions. We move on to the Guardian newspaper. And on the Guardian this morning, we have 2023 APC PDP in mind games over primaries. In a fresh twist, APC adjusts timetable to hold primaries hours after PDP's. Says no truth in zoning presidency to Northeast. APC has no reason to zone presidency to the North. Tinubu's group kicks. Uncertainty in Buhari's cabinet as Malami Talen attend FEC after farewell session. Interesting. And Buhari to decide who stays, who goes, says Lai Mohammed. Interesting developments about all of those. And you would see from the Guardian newspaper a different kind of picture on the cover, a reflection of what the Southeast was like yesterday while Nnamdi Kanu was trying to push his way through a bail at the Federal High Court in Abuja. You have empty streets in Enugu and Umuahia, as empty as the graveyard, if you like. The street completely deserted on the orders of the IPOB sit-at-home arrangements. You have other stories on the cover of the Vanguard story, one of them which completely is replicated on most newspapers. EFCC detained ex-NDDC MD Ekeri, over 47 billion naira. And other news there reads, how influential politicians get away with corruption by Falana. You find that story on page 3. No plan to ban Facebook over IPOB government clarifies. You find that on page 4. And court affirms Adeleke as Osun PDP Goba candidate. Court strikes out new charges against Kanu. Bankers decry inability to pass rising production costs to consumers. That's a serious one on the part of business. A different kind of twist to the APC story. Why do you think they are playing this hide and seek, this cat and mouse game? Why are they trying to second guess each other? If they are sure of their candidate, why not just go ahead and hold your process and let your candidates emerge and begin the actual preparation?
You see, politicians are funny people. Yes, and they always look at the weakness of their co-contender, because it's like chess game. You know, you look at the movement of your colleague and see the weak link, so that you take advantage of that. You can see we have reported that days ago that APC is really working towards choosing their presidential candidate from the north, because based on our findings, it may not be true, it may be true, but you know, when PDP opened up the space and said contenders from across the country can vie for the presidency, the conclusion by analysts is that the opposition party wants to, you know, pick its presidential candidate from the north. Of course, people argue that there is balance of power between north and south, but it is obvious politicians know that a lot of votes, you know, come out from the north, and most likely they want to take advantage of that to regain power, which they lost about 7 years ago. And people in APC, they are saying if they take the risk of
going to a different
you
place.
know, respecting the gentleman's
agreement
of ceding power to the south, the tendency is that PDP will win the election before noon on the election day. Yes, and this is why you see them playing the cat and mouse that we mentioned earlier. They want the PDP to, you know, do theirs first before they pick their own. But I really want to thank INEC, you know, because INEC, you know, stood its ground that they just have to
conclude the process,
within the first week of June. So let them continue
with the dilly-dally. There is no more than 24 hours in a day.
Exactly.
And very quickly, we saw the images of cities in Enugu and Umuahia, how desolate those cities have become on the orders of IPOB, and the impact this could be having on livelihood, on businesses, especially, I mean, for the small akara trader who needs to grind those beans and make those bean cake and make a difference of maybe 1,000 naira to feed her wards that day. What does this continuous sit-at-home practice mean for the entire Southeast?
Some people, you know, are saying it's really a subtle blackmail. Beyond Nnamdi Kanu, those behind this feel that the only way to get power, political power, is through this blackmail. You remember the pre-1999 episode, which was the aftermath of the June 12th, you know, issue, exactly, that culminated in ceding power to the west, to the southwest, in order to, you know, assuage the feeling of people from that part of the country. But I don't want to believe that, but people are really accusing the governors. Whether we like it or not, even if you say the power is vested in the hands of the federal government, governors really have a role to play. If you have, you know, authority within a constitutionally recognized authority, then it's really a recipe for chaos. And you can see it is the downtrodden that are really paying the big price. Yes, people really believe that if governors of this, the 5 governors of, you know, in the Southeast, the senators, the members of the House of Reps, traditional rulers, if they come together and say no to this, there is no way
to continue.
Yes. Why are we not witnessing this in the South? There are, you know, there are contiguous states there.
Yeah.
Why are we not witnessing that in the South? It's a big question.
Truly.
So this boils down to the determination of those in authority to stem the tide. But I don't think if it is really good to allow miscreants, you know, to hold,
state hostage.
you know, states hostage. Yeah, it's really sad.
Really, really sad, I must say. Now let's take a look at some more papers talking about the Nigerian Tribune this morning. And the Nigerian Tribune leads with the story about alleged 80 billion naira fraud. Federal government suspends Accountant General, postpones FAC meeting. You'd find other stories also on the Nigerian Tribune right at the top. NANS threatened to shut down international airports nationwide. Begs Atiku, Tinubu, others to raise money to meet ASU demands. You'd find other stories on page 29. Lagos bans Okada in 6 local government areas, 9 LCDAs. Mayhem as Okada riders set Abuja market ablaze. You'd also see Oshun Guba, court affirms Adeleke as PDP candidate. Plateau APC Guba primary, gang up against Lalong's preferred aspirant. And on page 16, APC presidential primary, it is either Amechi or me, no contest between us. This is coming from Jigasti governor. You'd also see other stories. Makinde Abdurazak, flag of 76.6 kilometers Ogbomosho Isheyu Road. And then gunmen kill security guard, relatives of Lagos local government boss in Ebonyi. And on page 15, Rivers APC, many injured at Secretariat as police shoot to disperse protesters. And then you see a picture there of arrests made by the Nigeria Police Force of 2 over kidnap of Greenfield Varsity students, recover 61 firearms, 376 ammunition, 41 AIL rifles, 2 million cash and others. And then the story that seems to be making headway in all the papers this morning, the one about APC adjusts timetable, shifts convention primaries dates, silent on zoning arrangement. And on page 2, Malami talent show up at FEC. Now I would like for you to comment on this the story about NANS threatening to shut down international airports nationwide, and they're also appealing to Atiku and Tinubu to raise money, you know, to settle ASU.
The second leg of the demand, you know, contradicts
the first.
The first, yes. Here, you want to shoot airports, and probably they know they can't block roads because those that matter no longer travel by road. So the only way is to shoot the airport so that nobody
flies.
Yes, I really sympathize with our students, you know, because if you look at how people are playing with dollars, how people are, look at how the two leading political parties wrecked in billions within hours.
Like Sunday said, 100 million is like urgent 2K.
Yes. And you know what they said, the leaders of, especially the leading party, they said is to scare away on serious contenders. That was why they, upped the game. But you can see how, the contenders, demystify the threat. How many people bought the
25
yes.
in one party?
By the way, and then look at the case of the Accountant General, 80 billion. When we were children, they said if you have 1 billion, you will continue. If you are spending, is it 1 million or 100,000 until you die? And even if you will be 80 years, you will be rich, But here we are. So what the students are saying is, why not block these leakages? Some of these politicians, what they are spending, why not donate the money and rescue, the ivory towers? So I want to plead with the politicians to support the opening of our universities. But we discussed this here weeks back, that there are many ways to address the challenges afflicting our universities, because you sometimes you wonder whether Nigeria lives in a different planet. Because we now go to Niger, because no strike in Nigerian universities. We go to Uganda, we go to Benin Republic, we go to US, we go to Malaysia, we go to India, we go to China. And some of these countries, they even give scholarships to Nigerians. So what is really the problem with our system? Is it the acts establishing the universities? So I don't even see the system working, even if Nigeria is to, surrender maybe the whole budget of a certain year for the universities. It will not solve the problem.
True.
Because we have to look at the rules guiding the activities of these universities and then change them in line with best practices. That is the summary of it. Because personally, I don't really believe in tuition-free universities. I said it here, and it was based on our findings, based on our discussions. How much do you pay for your child attending nursery school? Some people pay up to 1 million for their toddlers attending kindergarten. But when it comes to university, you say that it is tuition-free. It's really, an impossibility. People should be, and not everybody should go to university. I keep saying, because we always ask people to contextualize some of these things. 80% of the Chinese you see working in Nigeria, Indians working in Nigeria, they are not graduates.
They're not.
They were well equipped at secondary school level to become self-employed or to become serious artisans, to have technical skills that they can take care of their family. But by the time you said every other person must acquire a degree, then who will now be the technician? We converted all our polytechnics to university. It doesn't work like that. As I said, Nigeria, we pretend to live in a separate planet, and that is why we have existential problem. But we must have to key into global best practice on how to manage our universities, how to manage our polytechnics, how to manage our technical schools, so that at the end of the day, we get it right. Yes.
Very unfortunate one there. Before we leave this, we also have, incidentally, all of the papers seem to have very serious pictorials on the cover of the papers. First, it was Daily Trust with the mayhem in Day, and then we saw the silent streets with the Guardian newspaper, and with Tribune, we see those arrests of people who are linked to the Greenfield kidnapping with this amount of guns and catchy, from just one group. And you begin to wonder how seriously militarized our forests and hinterlands are in Nigeria because of the activity of the proliferation of small arms. What can we do to stem this tide? How do we fight terrorism, bandits, and proliferation of small arms at the same time in this country?
We must secure our borders. Because if people have access, you see, drugs and weapons, they are some of the things you get with ease, especially if you have the resources. Now, these bandits, considering the money they are getting on daily basis, they don't build houses. In most cases, because if you arrest them, they rarely show you, serious assets that this is what exactly. So what they use the money for is to buy more arms, buy the ammunition, buy drugs, and then chase women. This is what they do because they know that, sooner than later they will be apprehended. So it's just to equip themselves with more weapons, take drugs so that they can, inflict maximum injury. Yes, on symbol of authority and all that. But we will not address this without addressing the root cause, because if you keep you know, cutting the, is it the head? Or the, yes, you have to address the problem. In Nigeria, people import arms using donkeys, using camels, you know, because you have countless unmanned borders. So we must address that and then mop up the arms, yes, because if people have access to arms, you know, their propensity to commit crime is extremely high. And when you compare these arms with what our security operatives have, it's pathetic. Our security operatives must always approach these miscreants from position of strength, meaning they should have superior firearms, so that they can tackle them the way they should. But honestly, without securing our borders, there is no way we will address crimes and criminality in Nigeria.
We move on quickly to this day newspapers, and the major headline is still staying with politics. The 23 APC members seeking to replace Buhari. You'll find all of the pictures there on the cover, starting with the vice president and then to the Senate president, to Ahmed Tinubu, to the former governor of Ogun State, down to Professor Ayade. Quite a number of former governors on the list, former and serving governors. Ogbonnaya Onu, the Minister for State for Education, featuring prominently on that list, and Governor Yaya Bello. And Tunde Bakari, of course, the outlier from there, and former Senate President Ken Namani. Badaru is there. He has said the race is between him and Amechi. Let's see how that goes. And interestingly, we also have Governor Yerima, who, among several other people, also has the blessing of the president. It's going to be a very interesting. The president clearly has blessed these 23 candidates. Let's see what happens to them in the next couple of days. And we have right there above the nameplate, returning ministers, Buhari to determine Silva Ngige talent's fate, says Mohammed. I don't know what else is left to be determined. They were at the council meeting. I think that is sufficient confirmation, if any. But let's see how that plays out. And as Nigeria struggled with growing commodity prices, UK inflation hit 40 years high. Incidentally, all the inflations in Nigeria seem to be imported inflations. If prices go high abroad, it goes high here. If things happen here, it goes high here. There is no hiding place for the Nigerian citizen, incidentally. And then we have federal government declined consent to Seplat Mobil oil producing asset acquisition deal. There have been efforts for Mobil to exit the Nigerian upstream sector by selling some of its assets to Seplat, and the government would not consent to that deal, owing to a number of factors. If you want more details on that, you'll find it on page 51 of this day newspaper. And right there, it's a belt below the major stories. 2023, APC implosion, eminent over move to keep presidency in the north, Patif chieftains warns. Interesting stories from this day newspaper. But I would like you to, we are now putting faces to these 23 persons. It's amazing, cutting across everywhere from the country. From every part of this country. What do you make, generally speaking, of this? Well, like we have in the football circle, this 23-man team.
All blessed by the president.
I mean, we know the dates for the primaries have been set. We know how much money, in quotes, seem to be flying around. We know how difficult it has been to get hotel rooms in Abuja right from yesterday.
Everywhere.
You know, because they've all been taken over. I wonder how many rooms one delegate will sleep in. He probably will have to do 3 hours in one hotel and move on to the other hotel. What does it feel like now that we are putting faces to these 23 persons? Does it reduce the anxiety, or we are now moving properly into that nerve-wracking phase?
Moment.
The first take is that there is no single unfamiliar face there.
Yes.
This is the first message, meaning it is a serious challenge for the youth, you know, because
Well, the man from the dancing governor from Rivers will tell you.
Seems to be having a lot of fans. He has quite a number of fans.
Yeah. This is one. Myself and our political editor, we were trying to put together a certain story a few days ago. So we met one key actor in the ruling party. We were discussing off the record. We said, please, what is the body language of the president? Because almost all these people, they have visited him, and when they come, you see them smiling as if they will be sworn in the next day. Do you know what they was? He laughed. He said, do you think Buhari will endorse Yusuf?
That's his son.
So I look at I wanted to figure out, Yusuf, meaning his son. He said, do you think he will endorse Yusuf? So maybe, above all, despite maybe the shortcomings of the president and all that, so you cannot take this away from him. So far, he has played the father figure thing. People will dismiss him, people will accuse him of anything, but you can see, as far as allowing the democratic space to thrive, he has done well. Even though people are saying by now, his body language should be understood. But he has kept every other person guessing. I can assure you, even within the APC, they don't really know who is the favorite of the president. But the takeaway is that he said he kept that close to himself, in one of his interviews. But we know the D-Day is approaching. In the next 1 week.
And we cannot wait to see how that plays out.
In the next 1 week, because in the next 1 week or 10 days, we must know
who the anointed
child
is.
So it's really interesting.
I was watching a short clip by, now I don't know which is the proper preface. Is it the 16th Emir? No, or the former Emir? I'm not sure now. But Sanusi Mohammed II at an investment forum in Nasara a couple of days ago, and he was saying to the governor, I pray that the good Lord would bless you with enough investment as he has blessed the APC with presidential.
I remember, yes, I remember in between 2006 and 2007, when Obasanjo was the president, he too, somehow left the space. Yes, because I know that many governors visited us. We were reporting from this. I was reporting from Adamawa, I think. Many of the PDP governors, they kept visiting, they kept campaigning and all that, consulting. And all of them thought that he was with them. At the end of the day, he picked
an outlier.
Yes, because Yar'Adua never showed any interest. I remember some of the contenders were telling us that was the time they even got Yar'Adua's phone number. Because he wasn't bothered. He was there in Katsina, and we don't know why Obasanjo went for him.
And behold, he made an amazing president.
Yes, he was indeed. But you see, it was when he died. When he was there, people were just accusing him that he was a provincial president. He don't even know Kanu.
And he admitted that, at that time. He said the process that brought him into power was not perfect.
But it was the listener par excellence.
Yesterday we said we should do a story on how contenders are even doing photo ops with his mom, just to associate themselves with him, because he's no longer here. So maybe it will be after Buhari, maybe long after he is gone, maybe settle in Daura or in Kaduna, that people will see the wisdom
in some of the things,
in some of the things he did, especially in, as I said, in allowing the competition. Because fair enough, I said it earlier that no serious person, even at home front, you groom somebody to take over from you so that your empire will not collapse. Yes, I think it's part of human expectation, that you should have somebody to take over from you. But allowing the competition is good. Probably it is going to be, we don't know whether Buhari will make a choice at the Eagle Square, maybe. That is where he will choose his best man.
Interesting insights from the general editor of the Daily Trust. I wish that the government was making some taxes from those 100 million, the way they tax the small milk that we buy in the market. Maybe we would have made some more money for activities. So we want to thank you for finding time to share your thoughts with us on the newspaper review this morning on Daybreak on Trust Television. We hope you have a delightful day ahead. This is where we draw the curtain for the newspaper review this morning with Malam Idris. What am I saying? Malam Hamza Idris, the general editor of the Daily Trust newspaper. We would take a short breather at this point to continue after this break. Please stay with us. Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television. It's 8 a.m. on the final lap of our wonderful journey this morning. I started alone, but thankfully, I have my co-pilot with me in the studio. I am Sunday Michael Ogu.
And I'm Zainab Bala. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
We start with the news headline on the alleged 80 billion naira fraud. Accountant General suspended indefinitely.
5 killed as traders, Okada riders clash in Abuja.
FEC approved 3.4 billion naira for Aviation Ministry's building.
And now the news in detail. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, has suspended the Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris, over the allegations by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, that he laundered over 80 billion naira. Daily Trust gathered that the minister directed that Idris should proceed on indefinite suspension pending the outcome of his investigation. The FCC arrested Idris on early in the week following verified intelligence that he allegedly raked off the funds through bogus consultancies and other illegal activities using proxies, family members and close associates. The Commission spokesperson Wilson Uwojaren in a statement said the funds were laundered through real estate investment in Kano and Abuja. Moving on, at least 5 persons have been reportedly killed and houses set on fire in a clash between traders and Okada riders at the Day, a community in Abuja Municipal Area Council of the Federal Capital Territory. Residents told Daily Trust that an incident involving a bikeman led to the breakdown of law and order in the community. Daily Trust cannot independently verify casualty figures, but one of the affected persons confirmed that his house was touched. The traders were said to have attacked the rider, whom they blamed for recklessness, which led to the death of one passenger. Moving on, the Federal High Court, Abuja, strikes out a newly amended 6-count charge preferred against Nnamdi Kanu by the federal government following the withdrawal of the charge by the federal government. The withdrawal came after Mike Ozekome complained to the court that the prosecution is trying to delay processes by continuous amendment of the charge against his client. Ozekome told the court that this is the 7th time the federal government is amending its charge. Justice Binta Nyako concurred to Ozekome's submission, stating that Kanu is not expected to take plea on those newly amended charges immediately, as he needs time to digest them before doing so. Ardia Omar reports.
The much-awaited date for the bail application hearing of the Indigenous People of Biafra's leader, IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, is today. But it didn't start without a little bit of drama, as some supporters of the IPOB leader were seen around the court and they were dispersed with tear gas by the security agents who were on ground, gallantly on ground, to make sure that citizens follow law and order in the court premises. That's the Federal High Court premises. Today was set aside for bail application, but according to the Defense Council, the government sprang up with a surprise, and this, they say, has happened for the 7th time. In the government's motion, they moved the motion that struck out one charge out of the 7 charges that is still left for the Indigenous People of Biafra's leader. Recall that in the last sitting, which happened in the month of April, but the court presided over by Justice Binta Murtala Nyako, struck out 8 charges out of the 15. So right now, what they are having this storm of issues about in the court today was the fact that this came out in the wee hours of the night, and it didn't give them time to actually serve this to the Defense Council. It created a storm quite well in the courtroom. And right now, what is going to happen is that these charges will remain the way it is, because it's going to be 7. And according to the Defense Council, it said that if they accept this 6-count charge, it might mean that they will have to go for a new plea, which might not be favorable for them. So the bail application, of course, today has been denied, but not completely denied, because in the wisdom of the court, they have to sit again and listen to the full story why Nnamdi Kanu skipped trial in the year 2017. And until they hear the whole story, they cannot make a decision. But the date, the story continues, or the court sitting continues, or stayed adjourned to the 26th of May 2022. Martia Umar, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Also, in other reports, as aspirants for the 2023 presidential election move to secure party tickets to contest, some aspirants, seen largely as underdog, may spring up surprises in the build-up to the political party's national convention. Trust TV Sheffield Suleiman takes a look at another batch of contenders and their chances in the race. The report.
15 presidential aspirants are battling to get the PDP ticket to contest the 2023 election. Peter Obi is among them. Obi, a running mate to Atiku Abubakar, lost the presidential election in 2019. He served 2 terms as governor of Anambra State. Though not a bride to proponents of money politics, his chance can be amplified by the push for the Igbo presidency.
The most critical thing is, what do we do to pull Nigerians out of poverty and create a future for teeming unemployed youths of Nigeria? We must change our polity and change to what other nations are doing, and that is building a better nation for their people.
Aminu Tambuwal, a former Speaker House of Representatives, a 2-term governor of Sokoto State, is very visible in the race. He is not new to delegates politics as a frontline PDP presidential aspirant in the last election. Though age is on his side, rotation or zoning, even as jettisoned by his party, may be a stumbling block. From the League of Other Political Parties, Kingsley Moghalu, with persistent push for the top job, understanding of the political economy of the nation as a former deputy governor of the central bank, could be added advantage. Weak and not well-known political platform will undermine his chances. In the ruling APC, Yaya Bello, a 2-term governor of Kogi State, is young and optimistic about his chances. He enjoys the support of the youth, who believe mainly in his ability to support the course of stomach infrastructure. His performance or otherwise as governor will form the basis of his assessment.
Our great party, the All Progressives Congress, is a party that has its own ethics, rules, and regulation. And I know surely that all of these are in my favor, and I am not in any way scared or deterred by the pedigree or anybody whatsoever.
Though presidential aspirants across party lines have since shifted focus to wooing party delegates ahead of conventions, deploying available strategies, the contemplation by the major political parties to use consensus option in determining their flag bearers may put a number of contenders on the edge. Shapir Suleiman, Trust TV News, Abuja.
And now we welcome back from the report. We move straight into a major discussion for this segment. The International Monetary Fund, IMF 2021 Article 4 estimates that the giant of Africa, Nigeria, spends 85.5% of its total revenue to service its total debt of about $95.17 billion in 2021. But a worrisome part of the scenario is that its peer country, South Africa, spent a paltry 20% to service its much bigger debt of $261 billion during the same period. What's the missing link really in Nigeria's debt management? We have someone to help us understand this better. The former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Dr. Suleiman Indanusa, joins us via Skype at this hour, and also joining us by phone is the former MD of Springbank. It's an economist and a lecturer from the Bayes University, Dr. Mukhtar Imam. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Starting with Dr. Mukhtar, what would you make of our current debt situation with regards to debt service, especially in the face of the continuous argument by government functionaries that we do not have a borrowing crisis? What we have is a revenue crisis. At the rate at which we are going, is it still healthy for the country to continue borrowing if we go by the government plans for 2023, where it hopes to bring in an additional 6.3 trillion naira in fresh borrowings? We seem to have had a bit of a hitch there. Talking to Dr. Mukhtar, I would come straight to Dr. Indanusa. Can you please help us make a sense of this borrowing and our debt service in the face of fresh plans for a new 6.3 trillion naira, which may likely jack up our total debt stock to about 45 trillion by the end of this year? Dr. Indanusa.
Thank you very much. Indeed, our public debt stock, like we all know, it's about 40 trillion naira, which is about 94 billion US dollars. You recall just at the third quarter of this year, the federal government has already raised about 1.25 billion US dollars. Now, the criticality of this debt is when you actually look at it in context, and the fact that if you dissect all the debt, you see that 48% of the total foreign debt is multilateral, which the interests are quite low. Bilateral is also about 11%, but the worrying aspect of our debt are the non-concessionary debt, which is the Eurobond and diaspora, which takes almost 38 to 40% of the debt. And in terms of debt service, it takes almost 70 or 75% of the total debt service. So, of course, if you look at the issues with our debt, it's becoming very unbearable. That is the burden. Either so, the DMO has looked at our debt from the perspective of the debt to GDP. And if you look at that, the World Bank threshold for that is about 56%. And if you look at it, the Nigerian ratio is about 24%. And the DMO is trying to explain the fact that being at 24, then there is no cause for concern. But that is not the issue. You have to look at it from our ability to service those debts, not compare our debt to GDP. It is our ability, the revenue available to service that debt. I think that's where the biggest concern is, because between 75 to 90% of our revenue is being used to service both the local and foreign debt. And again, you also know that the fact that we have about 40 trillion naira debt, that is not all that is. If you look at the umbrella funding by central banks, that is printing of money, which different people are raising it between 10 to 20 trillion naira, one begins to be very, very worried.
That is the ways and means.
Yeah, ways and means. And also, if you look at the fact that there are other sources of domestic debt, contractors, we also have AMCON debt, which is about 5 trillion naira. If you put it together, all those things are liabilities standing to waiting to crystallize. So it's not just 40 trillion. We have more than that if you bring all these ways and means and so on together. So our ability to really pay this debt is what is in doubt. And then, unfortunately, there is the rising fiscal deficit, which you've alluded to. Already this year's budget, 2022, we have about 6.7
6.3 trillion
naira deficit. If you include that of state and FCT, which is another 1.6 trillion, our deficit is indeed almost about 8 trillion naira. Most of it is expected from debt, either domestic or foreign. So it is definitely very worrying, because our debt service to revenue that averages about 76% today is very, very critical. And therefore, something has to be done. Maybe I should stop at that. If you ask other specific questions, I would like to answer.
Okay. Now, the Debt Management Office has said that borrowings by the Nigerian government to fund critical infrastructures and deficits is not necessarily a bad idea. What do you think, about that assertion?
Well, on the face of it, it may seem like that. But if you look at in our 2022 budget, for example, the aggregate revenue is about 10.74 trillion naira. The aggregate expenditure is 17.13 trillion. Deficit, like we all know, is about 6.39, without even adding the one for states and FCT. But if you look at aggregate capital expenditure spending, which we will expect a lot of it will go to for infrastructures and so on, is 5.96 trillion, which is less than the budget deficit. Automatically, it means that some of the monies we are even going to raise is not going to capital. It is going to a recurrent expenditure, and that has been the bane. Almost just about only about 48 to 50% of the deficit that we finance by way of debt actually goes into capital formation. Most of it goes into recurrent expenditure. In addition to over-invoicing of the capital projects and the productivity of those capital investments. So, yes, on the face of it, DMO may want to say there is no worry because they are raising money. But it has to be clearly, we have to clearly link what we are raising to the projects that we are supposed to do. If you look at our debt structure, for example, most of it is dominated by FGM bonds. And these FGM bonds are not tied to self-liquidating projects. We have about 13.5 trillion in FGM bonds, which is about 73.84%. So the real infrastructure bonds so far is tied to Sukuk and the green bonds. And all of it is less than 3%. So when you look at some of these things, you begin to wonder. If the argument is that we are tying this to the project, then we have to see that it's tied so that we can monitor and evaluate the value propositions that we derive from that. But even the majority of the bonds under the FGM bonds are not tied to any project. It is just of recent that the federal government has started having a project-tied bonds like the Cook and then the Green bonds, which are meant for specifics that you can look at and say, yes, these are things that we took this money for and we are using. So essentially, we must be very clear about that, the productivity of our bonds or our debt can be brought to question.
So thank you for those thoughts. We now I think we have gotten back Dr. Mukhtar on the line. Dr. Mukhtar, I would like you had listened to what Dr. Ndanusa had said. The question would then be, what can we do to improve our lots, as a country? Clearly, the rate at which we are going with the amount we are spending to service this debt, it's no longer sustainable given fiscal space. Which one should be a low-hanging fruit? Expanding the fiscal space so that we make more revenue and to drive down the ratio of these payments, or to begin to look at restructuring this repayment such that it can bring down significantly this repayment. And with that, I mean, in direct response to Dr. Ndanusa, can we begin to look at more of the multilateral loans rather than the unstructured green Euro bonds that we go for, that basically it's far more expensive than what we get from the multilateral or bilateral loans?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I missed a large portion of the conversation, but drawing from the discussion from the last portion of what you said, I think both would work pari passu. There's the need for the government to ensure that there are structured policies and plans in place in terms of, for example, the need to ensure that resources that are taken for loans, rather, that are taken for infrastructure development, are put into these loans are supposed to go to. The issues which you raised, the twin issues of first looking at ways of expanding.
We seem to be having quite a number of challenges there from... Okay, it's back.
All right, so part of what needs to be done is to ensure that while we're at this, that we begin to produce more. You see, the only way we will be able to meet our responsibilities or obligations of servicing debt is to ensure that our production base is high. Currently, what we are experiencing is a very large or a high curve in terms of import, as opposed to what should be the case where you have an economy whereby 8 kobo out of a single naira that is gained goes into debt servicing, which is not very sustainable, like you rightly mentioned. So a lot needs to be done in that respect. Nigeria is an economy that is not necessarily blessed industrial-wise, but we have something that the world aches for in agriculture. So we can leverage on that, ensure that we invest more into agriculture, and then begin to expand into the value chain of agriculture, not just necessarily investing into it, but tapping into the various key value chain of agriculture so that we commercialize it in a way that it brings in service for money. And with that, we will be able to service these loans. As a matter of fact, I believe so much that where this expansion is done significantly, we'll be able to ensure that the loans themselves are drastically reduced. And that is very, very crucial to growing our economy. And then, of course, while expanding the revenue base, we must also ensure that we cut wastages. And by cutting wastages, it's not just about paying lip service to these things. It must be done in synergy, both at the national and subnational levels, because there is no meaningful or sustainable development that will come into this country without the subnationals being brought into play. You have a lot of governors sitting in their various cocoons and trying to live like emperors and kings while burdening the overall revenue of the country.
Okay. while we try to secure connections back with Dr. Mukhtar. Dr. Suleiman, you were a former Caesar of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and you have mentioned in your opening comments about the constitutions of some of those loans, especially the Eurobond as compared to others. And when we look at the interest payments on Eurobond, we see how high that is against the multilateral rules. Do you think, in your opinion, that we have made use of the capital market or the debt market sufficiently enough back homes, where we would have been able to secure long-term debts at a considerable interest rate and denominated Naira debt, such that we don't continue to suffocate from the crisis of the exchange rate crisis, which may, as at this morning, which may be triggering or tripling whatever those our exposures are in dollars?
Thank you very much. Of course, the federal government has been going to the capital market to raise funds. That is why you have the bonds, the SGM bonds. You also have the savings bonds. You have the Cook and the Green. All those are from the capital market. But essentially, what is important is the fact that as we raise those bonds, how productive, what is the multiplier effect of the utilization of those bonds? How efficiently are those the profits of those bonds used? What are the leakages? How are we able to get value for money? Because the multiplier effect of whatever bonds we take and invest in infrastructure, etc., is expected that later will create other values that will enhance our revenue propositions and employment, etc. But where those things are not there, then there's a problem. That is why it is important for us to reduce unproductive government expenditure. Why should we raise money and go and use it for recurrent expenditure? As much as possible, the revenue that we generate should be able to service our debt. But if those revenues, revenues are not properly harnessed and invested and useful things for our economy, obviously the vicious cycle will continue. So we have to look for more innovative ways of financing our infrastructure, for example, more emphasis on PPP, and also, so we design projects and we structure projects that will attract equity to do it, so that the revenue themselves will self-liquidate those loans. A lot of more innovation is required in those areas. And then the implementation of our policies are very important, because badly conceived policies, badly implemented policies also lead to a loss of serious resources. And even if you borrow, you'll be using it in the wrong way. But therefore, what are the other options that we need to take, apart from just going more and more for bonds? The printing of money that we have been doing, we see how disastrous it is on inflation and so on. Sale of government assets have been tendered as one way, that if there are moribund assets, maybe we should sell and reinvest in other modern infrastructure. Then increasing VAT and CIT, that is company interest, company income tax. They are good propositions, especially being pushed by the IMF. But the point is that at this point in time, when inflation and all the unemployment and poverty is so pervasive in our societies, our government has to be very clear in the counter narrative that increase in VAT and CIT will cost to the society. Diversify export, reduce public sector waste, and of course reduce subsidy, which is not politically popular, especially with the election coming. A lot of the subsidies that we give, which does not really trickle down enough on the people, is draining our revenue. Because if you look at how much we are budgeting for subsidies, the opportunity cost would have been for it to go into one infrastructure or the other. But that is not happening. It's not politically popular at this stage, even though government is gradually trying to reduce subsidy in the power sector, in the oil sector, etc. So there are some tough decisions that need to be taken so that we can actually move towards reducing revenue waste, attract more revenue, create widen the tax base, and so that we can strengthen our revenue. And there is an initiative which is called the Strategic Revenue Growth Initiative. If those things are implemented, then definitely it will sensitize the kind of borrowing that we do both domestically and foreign.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Suleiman. Now, let me direct this at Dr. Mukhtar. Would you say we are generating enough revenue, and how much of an impact, would this increased borrowing have on Nigeria's macroeconomy?
Well, we at this point cannot say we are generating sufficient revenue. The reality is this, that when you look at the debt to GDP ratio, which basically has been said to be within the margin that is still tenable. And then, of course, just oppose that with what we're talking about here, the debt to revenue ratio. You find that what we take out of what we generate to service our debt is not sufficient. Like I mentioned earlier, we're taking about 7 to 8 kobo out of a single naira that is made in this country to service loans and debts. That is not sustainable, and it doesn't speak in the direction of a country that is generating sufficient revenue. And that's why there is a need to ensure that we divest and find multiple sources and streams of earning for the country. That is very, very crucial. And we must also ensure that we look at the export market, because the truth is, there is no economy that is import dependent that will be able to sustain and grow itself. It is not feasible. That economy is certainly going to hit the brick wall. And so therefore there is the need to ensure all of these things are done. The question that was asked earlier about accessing multilateral loans and concessionary loans and all whatnot. The reality is these non-concessionary loans are limited. They're not always available. And there is the rush by virtually all economies around the world to be able to access these kinds of loans. The type coming from China, for example, for us, virtually the entire world is looking east now when it comes to getting these loans. And so therefore, these streams of getting access to loans becoming strangulated within the international system, and it is significantly affecting us. And so therefore, our revenues are not sufficient, and there is the need to ensure that more is done. The thing about economy is we always look at the numbers and the figures. We've talked about measures through which revenues can be increased. For example, company tax. Revenues are kept, accessed. Implementation becomes a problem. Using these resources for capital projects and infrastructure development that government itemizes becomes a problem, because the individuals themselves who are supposed to manage efficiently these resources and ensure that we see value and we have a return on investment on all of these various projects that have been talked about are not being done. And so there is the social psychological problem that is tied to the economic, basically retards the growth of the Nigerian economy. And that also has to be looked at as well. And by the way, Nigeria is one of those economies that is overtaxed, one of the most overtaxed economies in the world. So more attention needs to be focused on PPP, as has been mentioned by my respected elder, the former DG. More attention has to be paid into that. But the problem with that is this, that foreign direct investments and wooing in investors who would be able to bring equity to fund some of these projects is no longer feasible because of the security challenges that the country is facing. And so government needs to take charge to ensure that these issues are addressed. You have epileptic power supply in the country. These are responsibilities of government. If government does not put these infrastructures in place, there is no way we're going to woo in investors to be able to ensure that we, utilize resources into capital projects and infrastructure development for the overall gain of the Nigerian state.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mukhtar. Now back to you, Dr. Ndanusa. You've listened to quite a number of those thoughts. I was thinking to myself when you were listing the options available. For every option you mentioned, I thought of a problem, which you also identified. You talked about expanding the tax net, and one would wonder who else will pay those tax, that companies that are already contending with quite a lot, generating their own power, probably paving their own roads, and all of that. You talked about the PPP. We have not exactly done very well with previous PPP attempts in Nigeria. You are aware of what had happened to the initial concessioning attempts of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway and all of that. You talked about expanding exports. That would mean adding value. We don't know whether the manufacturing firms where we are today would have the capacity to do that immediately. Given all of these challenges, how much of quagmire are we in, with the bid to changing the narrative for Nigeria?
Well, I'm optimist because otherwise we will just close shop and forget about any hope of getting out of the issue. As it stands, the revenue to GDP ratio we have is 6%. 6%, that is the revenue to GDP ratio. Our debt to GDP is about 24%, and still counting. And therefore, our deficit is growing. All those things are characteristic of revenue issues. So what is the major issue that we have as far as our funding is concerned is obviously revenue. And we have to look for creative ways of raising those revenues. Going by the debt route, it cannot work at the end of the day. It's becoming already unsustainable debt. So what are the other options? Yes, the fact that the other options are not looking up right now does not mean that we are not going to continue to look at those areas and look for more creative ways to making it work. For example, one area that you do not need anybody, it's not difficult to do if you have the political will, is to stop the wastage. And is to emphasize on priorities. Stop the wastage, emphasize on priority projects, and of course, cut off the corruption, which are the leakages, and then direct your resources to those projects. As for the taxes that we are saying, the more productive our infrastructural investment becomes, with better roads, better railways, better power supply, and all those things, it increases productivity. And when productivity is increased, that the ability to pay taxes will, even the small-scale businesses, if they can have life 24/7 or most of the time in the day, obviously their productivity will increase, the revenue they generate will increase, and then they become easily taxable. And so it's a multiplier effect. The entire value chain of our economy has to change. We have to look at our concerns, and we have to see how we can tackle them. Then we have to also, of course, diversify. We are depending so much on oil. The crash of 2016, 2017 is because of the crash in oil prices. We are solely dependent on oil, so whatever happens to the oil sector, it affects us. Even now that we are having a bumper harvest, we are supposed to be having bumper harvest in oil prices, etc. We are not able to have it because of the huge subsidies, and then the huge waste, the theft of the oil itself, oil bunkering, etc. is denying us to enjoy the bumper harvest from caused by the Ukraine war, etc., the Russian-Ukraine war.
Thank you very much.
Those are the areas we have to look at. There is we just have to do it. There is no option. If we don't do it in the short to medium term, then the vicious cycle will continue. And I don't think any Nigerian, both the citizens and the leaders, will want us to leave, because these are practical issues that must be resolved.
Thank you very much.
We have revenue issues, and it has to be tackled.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid that is how much time would permit us to take this morning. Thank you for those elucidating thoughts coming from the former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Dr. Suleiman Indanusa. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning and offer your perspective. And also on the show this morning, it's an economist and lecturer from Bayes University here in Abuja, Dr. Mutari Imam. It was a pleasure have you join us this morning and offer those insightful perspectives on what we can do, to move this country forward with regards to our revenues and debt service challenges. It's a pleasure to have you both on the studio with us. Do have a great day ahead.
Thank you.
We will take a short breather at this point. When we return, the discussion continue. Please stay with us.
Daily, we bring you updates around politics.
People like you who are very young, you have no future. Anybody now who is 30 years, if what is happening today continues, by the time you are 60, you will have no country.
The DPO of a particular unit does not have to wait until the commissioner tells him what to do within his jurisdiction.
We have political parties on the ground. Some of them have been there for years. But they themselves, in their own sober moments, they know that this country is not the one they're expecting to run.
Policy and governance.
Are you saying the NBS is lying?
I'm saying to you very clearly that the NBS has a serious problem with accurate data till today.
The 5th Assembly, as well as the 7th Assembly, their own attempt were unproductive.
Emergence of the Taliban has simply emboldened terror groups globally.
There is a lot of attention with regards to security developments in Nigeria.
On Daily Politics, we interrogate issues, holding the actors to account, bearing in mind all the sides.
We heard that in some places now, people have to go and pay tax, not to the local government, not to the state, but to criminals.
Nobody can come to your house and kidnap you without information.
If this country is bleeding, it is bleeding because we have failed to educate our young.
Welcome to Inside Abuja.
Most people who drive on Nigerian roads believe that it's only when you see a law enforcement agent that you are supposed to behave. Meanwhile, you already know what is right for you.
You cannot take what you cannot give. So they cannot come and enforce and take what they cannot give us. So if there is something they want to take from us, there must be an unanimous arrangement that if they collect to us, they have something to give us.
Well, there's a group of vigilantes. So they are trying small. Sometimes they used to come out in the night.
For Abuja Investments Company Limited owned markets, the market itself is insured. That is for the owners of the market itself.
The carton of Nigerian chicken was 8,000 naira, but we are selling it 18,000 naira now. Kilo was 1,000 naira, 1,100 then, but now we are selling it 2,000 naira. And it is not our fault, it is the way we buy.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust Television. Now let's take a look at a whole new dimension on the show this morning. The politics of zoning is likely to make or mar the 2023 presidential election, with implications for the stability of the country. It is one of the most contentious issues in Nigeria at the moment, particularly in the two major political parties, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, and the All Progressive Congress, the APC, which both represent most of the contending stakeholders in Nigeria. Now, it is often argued that zoning is not expressly stated in either the 1999 Constitution or the Electoral Act, but it was a convenient measure adopted by the People's Democratic Party in 1999 with a return to severer rule in order to ensure political representation, equity, justice, and a sense of ownership in political representation. Now, to give us perspectives to this, we have a lawyer and political analyst, Pius Damba, here to talk to us more about this. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Yes, you did, actually.
Thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Let's have your thoughts around this whole argument. What's the moral, what's the basis for even having this conversation in the first place?
Well, the issue of zoning, it's something that should be of concern to us all, because when you want to recruit the leadership that should lead this country, it's important to actually factor the diverse nature of Nigeria, so that you don't leave some people out of the equation. Now, it may not have been actually entrenched in the Constitution specifically to say that leadership succession should be based on zoning by way of rotating among the zones. However, the principles in the Constitution support the fact that we should look at how diverse Nigeria is in terms of forming the government. And so it's only based on fairness, equity, and equity to consider the different categories of people that actually make up the country. And of course, even when you are looking at the competence of various persons that should lead us, of course, you cannot say that competence is exclusively reserved to any particular region or any particular tribe or community. You can find competent people all over the place, and so there is need to actually recognize the different groups or ethnic groups that we have in Nigeria and give them a voice and give them a sense of belonging in the administration or in featuring the leaders that we have in the country. So I think that it is important that that conversation should be on board, so that you know, we don't neglect some parts of the country that ordinarily should be carried on in terms of administration. And of course, the rules of fairness and equity can be, it's more or less like a universal law that transcends virtually every society all across the world. And what is fair and equitable and just in Nigeria is the same in the US, is the same in England, it's the same everywhere. And so it's only on that principle of fairness, equity, and justice that zoning can thrive, you know, and it's part of the principle that is entrenched in the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria. So it's not something that contravenes or it's against the principle or the spirit of the Constitution.
Okay. Now we're already seeing, you know, for instance, in the Southeast, some of them are already feeling sidelined, and some of them have expressed dismay, you know, over the whole issue of the zoning arrangement. In your assessment, what implication, you know, will this have, you know, on the 2023 general elections?
Well, you see, in as much as there is need for all regions of the country to be, you know, incorporated or carried along in the governance in the country, you know, we must also do it in a civil way and in a manner approved by law. So the agitations from the Southeast is quite noble agitation of wanting to actually have more participation in the government, but that should be done, you know, through lawful means, because we are a country that is being regulated by a constitution. The mode of participating in politics is defined, you know, and you cannot, for instance, stay outside party politics and expect that power will be given to you. Right. And so the agitation should be done in line with law, such that the aspirations of the people of the Southeast should be achieved via the ballot. You know, you can talk to us, you can talk to Nigerians, you can engage in the political parties, you can engage the political parties and make your case. You know, it's also beautiful that most of the parties have actually recognized the idea of zoning in their constitution. And you know, the constitutions of political parties are met pursuant to the provisions of the 1999 Constitution itself. So that means that it has a backing of law. And so when you engage your political party, you know, and you have them convinced of the need, you know, for you to take your turn in terms of featuring the next leader of the country, then of course I believe that your political party should be able to reason with you, you know, and in the principle of fairness and justice and accord with you. And you know, the space, the political space in Nigeria is open in such a way that if you are not comfortable with a particular platform or political party, if you feel that, for instance, the two main political parties are not treating you fairly, you know, you have the option of, you know, floating an entirely new political party or even going to another platform. We have 18 registered political parties at the moment. So realizing your ambition must not be tied to one political party. If the space does not accommodate your principle, then of course you have the right to move. So I see the Nigerian political space as open and big enough for everyone to thrive, as long as you know what you want and you are doing it lawfully within the confines of the law.
I like the way you present the issues of fairness, equity, and justice, and how you itemize what options are available. But when we look at what is practical in Nigeria,
yes,
we know that coming in as an outlier is very difficult.
Yes.
If you are not from the precincts of either the ruling party or the major opposition party,
Yes.
because of the antecedents and
Yes.
the huge resources that is available to this party and the goodwill perhaps that they have built over the years. Would it then be out of place that this group are asking that within these two places where there are chances that we could become something, that you make it your own mandate? So what exactly, my question is, what is wrong? Is it the recruitment, the leadership recruitment process, or the failure of a part of this country to fully participate in the political party process that leads to emerging as a candidate, especially for the office of the president?
Well, you see, when you don't fully participate in the political activities of a political party, starting from the grassroots level, that is the ward level, then of course the chances that you will actually emerge at the top will be very, very slim. Now, and of course, it's not a journey that can be completed within a day. You know, it's something that has to be planned, it has to be calculated, you know, and it's a very long journey that you have to take. And so when you have such an ambition, I believe that you should work on it, you know, from the grassroots level, so that if you want to realize that ambition in a particular political party, then it should be seen that you are involved, you are participating at all levels, you know, because you have congresses at the ward level, you have congresses at the state, local government level, the state level, you know, and then the national level. And so building a structure, or, you know, penetrating through the structure that will enable you to realize your ambition, you know, will involve all of these processes. And I don't really see it as necessarily being a question of having so much money, in the sense that, of course, all of these political parties, you know, started sometime, you know, so someone actually began it, you know, and at the time they were starting, they didn't have all the resources they have at the moment, you know, so unless people just want to reap where they did not sow, it's important that, you know, you do the labor, you actually put in the work by, you know, involving right from the grassroots level, you know, and up to the national level in such a way that you properly organize, you properly pass out the message out there, and you involve the people. And I always say that there are a lot of Nigerians that are not involved, you know, actively in the political activities of this country. If you target the people that are not involved alone and, you know, convince them to start getting concerned and start participating, it can make a whole lot of difference. Because if you look at the figures, the votes that are usually you know, released by INEC, despite all the allegations of overvoting, inflation of votes and all of that, you know, the total vote cast is below 40 million, you know, and we are a nation of well over 200 million Nigerians.
True.
What it means is if you can even, you know, get 50 million Nigerians that have not been active to participate, you have already altered the outcome of the election. So it is not just about, you know, the two major political parties that have resources, but that you have a message that you'll be able to convince Nigerians and give them reason to join or to participate in the political space.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the program, Mr. Pius Damba.
Yes,
I'm having difficulties pronouncing your name. We hope to have you next time on the program.
It's all right. Thank you so much.
This is where we will draw the curtain for today. We hope we have brought you very insightful, very educative, and very entertaining program on our segment for Thursday today. And we leave you with all other enlightening program that will be served to you on the channels of Trust Television. Thank you for staying with us and for enjoying this ride. Have a blissful day and catch up with you tomorrow again on this show. I am Sunday Michael Ogo.
And I'm Zainab Bala. See you tomorrow.